Welcome to Aspen Leading Edge. I'm Patty Roberts from St. Mary's University School of Law, and today's guest is Matthew Lyon. He's Vice President and Dean of the Duncan School of Law at Lincoln Memorial University. Welcome, Dean Lyon.
Thank you, Patty, for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to have you because you are a fellow pandemic dean. We started in June of 2020 together, and also a William and Mary grad, not the law school, but undergraduate. So we already share a lot of experiences, and it's always fun to talk with you. But today I wanted to have our listeners learn a little bit more about Lincoln Memorial. You have been there since its inception, at least of the law school. And so please tell us a little bit about your law school and your involvement in its creation and accreditation.
Sure. So my wife and I moved to Knoxville in 2008. I had gone to law school in Chicago and practiced at a large firm there, and we were looking to relocate to be close to our families. I'm, as you mentioned, from Virginia. I grew up in Newport News, Virginia, and my wife is from Alabama, Huntsville. And so we chose Tennessee because it was right in the middle. And I applied for clerkships here because I thought it'd be a good way to transition to the legal market here in Tennessee because I knew I'd have to take the bar exam. This was before the days of the uniform bar exam. Got one here with the state Supreme Court justice in Knoxville. So we moved here. And after I'd been working with him for a year or two, he mentioned that this new law school was starting in downtown Knoxville, LMU, Lincoln Memorial University. And perhaps I should go over and talk to the dean at the time about teaching because I always enjoyed working with our externs and being involved in that mentoring role. So I ended up being hired as an adjunct professor and taught our first two classes. We started here at LMU with an evening program, a part-time program, which eventually transitioned only to a day program with a reduced load option and ended up joining the full-time faculty in 2011. So LMU has a long history here in this region. It was started as a memorial to President Abraham Lincoln. The story goes that one of President Lincoln's generals, O.O. Howard, who later went on to head the Freedmen's Bureau and is the Howard that Howard University in Washington was named after, that he told him during the war he wanted to do something for the people of this region in southern Appalachia who were loyal to the Union. So East Tennessee is a mountain area, kind of not dissimilar to West Virginia, which is, broke away from Virginia because they were sympathized with the Union during the war. And so when General Howard came down here in the 1890s to speak at an event near the Cumberland Gap, which is about Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, all come together. It's about an hour and 20 minutes drive north of Knoxville. They ended up deciding to start and charter Lincoln Memorial University there as a living memorial to President Lincoln to educate the people of this region and train them to go back and be leaders in their communities. So LMU just celebrated a couple years ago its 125th anniversary. For most of its history, it was a liberal arts college, really focused on very small, educating people in this region. And about 20 years ago or so, began a series of growth initiatives, particularly organized around graduate programs. So it started with a medical school, the DeBuss College of Osteopathic Medicine, and has since LMU has opened a law school, of course, veterinary school, now a dental school that is in its second year of operation, in addition to graduate programs in nursing, education, business, and other fields. And LMU now has almost 6,000 students. It includes an undergraduate that's about a quarter of those students to a third of those students, and the rest are in graduate programs that are near the main campus in Harrogate, Tennessee, here in Knoxville, and actually as far-flung as Florida. So LMU's had a lot of growth, and the law school has been fortunate to be a part of that. Of course, President Lincoln was a lawyer, and it's very important to LMU's mission to have a law school to train students who are going to be lawyers and leaders in their community, and particularly serve underrepresented communities, not only in Southern Appalachia, but all over the country.
Well, I am excited that you have so many professional schools, and personally, I am now a mom of an LMU student. As you know, my daughter Sarah started at the vet school in January. So I am really looking forward to visiting the campus at some time soon and seeing the beautiful facilities that she's been telling us about. As far as the law school goes, I love the history, by the way, and how LMU started, and who's not a fan of Abraham Lincoln's, right? I recently found
Right.
out he
He's an
was a
easy
wrestler.
brand to sell. I'll tell you that.
I had it in my leadership class. Someone did a report on him and said the fun fact was he was a wrestler, and that is just not something I would have ever put in my thoughts about Abraham Lincoln. But now I
Of
can't.
course, he was very physical in his, our mascot at LMU was the Rail Splitters because he was known as the Rail Splitter.
Oh, I did not know that. I'll have to take a look at that on the web. But so at some point, it was decided that there should be a law school. There was this new law school that your judge told you about. And so tell me a little bit about starting a law school kind of from scratch and getting to the accreditation, through the accreditation, and what your law school population looks like now. Are you serving people from the region or beyond? Give us a little more
Sure.
info about
Yeah. So we started the law school in 2009, which, as you know, because you've been in legal education for a while, is sort of like buying a house in 2006. It was a very challenging time to start a
it.
new law school. And in addition, and again, I was not on the full-time faculty at the time, the first couple of years when a lot of these decisions were made, but the decision from the beginning was not to look like a traditional law school. And so a lot of things were put in place actually that have now become part of or are being proposed to become part of the ABA standards, such as a virtual law library, such as formative assessment in all of our classes. So we have required, and still to this day, have required midterms in all first year classes, to the point where in our academic schedule, we build out an exam week in September and February where we don't have classes, so that exam week can be taken as seriously as possible by the students to give professors the time to prepare those exams and grade those exams. We did a lot with technology, such as recording all of our classes, which of course didn't know a global pandemic was coming a number of years down the road, but that became
You were
a very
ready.
helpful tool to have that. And really a focus not only on a broad-based curriculum, prepare students for the bar exam, but on building practical skills as well, knowing that a lot of our students would be going into a government or small firm environment for the most part. So we had our challenges. Anyone who Googles us will see that with accreditation the first few years. But we did ultimately were successful in obtaining a provisional approval from the ABA in 2014 and our full approval in 2019, which was a long road. And as the academic dean for a number of those years, I was kind of the point person on the accreditation and all of the site visits and everything. So it was a great day of celebration for our law school. We did obtain that full approval. And so it was a challenge, but I do think ultimately made us a stronger institution and more prepared to deal with some of the freedom that comes with getting through that provisional approval or full approval process and figuring out, okay, what do we want to do next as a law school and where do we want to take our mission once we start to implement it more practically.
That's very exciting. So you were the first dean after full accreditation of this young law school. And some of the things that you talked about, like you said, the ABA now is imposing on lots of law schools or allowing. I'm intrigued with the virtual library idea. Did you really start with a virtual library? Have you continued with one? And what does that look like as a
Yes,
dean
so
who now
so so
sees
all
this
of our
news?
credit goes to our associate dean and director of the law library, Gordon Russell. He had been at a couple of other startup law schools or young law schools and had kind of implemented that model. And then when he came to LMU, we are in a historic building right in the middle of downtown Knoxville. Our building dates back to before the Civil War, and we are limited to some degree on space. And that was one of the reasons for the decision. But also, he felt very, very strongly and principally that the law school of the future should not necessarily be book focused. It should be allowing students and faculty and staff to access those materials online. And so we do have some physical holdings, in a space actually, and then they're scattered throughout the building. But the vast majority of our holdings are online. And have been since the school started. And actually, as we're talking about celebrating now this year, our 15th anniversary and the possibility of renovations, one of the things we're talking about is getting rid of the books that we do have, even though they're not that many, and creating some additional creative opportunities for study space for our students in the building, because honestly, they don't use them.
No, I think we're finding the same thing. What they want is study spaces, right? They
That's
want
right. Yes.
group study spaces and standing desks and multi-monitors and all the
Yep.
things that they're using today as they are engaged in their legal education. I guess the benefit or one of the benefits of being such a young law school is that in some ways you're probably more nimble because there isn't that kind of idea that, well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is how it was when I was here, that kind of thing. And so has it made you more adaptable when the ABA has, or the bar examiners have new things that we need to comply with, whether it be professional identity formation with the ABA or the next gen bar? Is it relatively easy to get your faculty on board to some of those changes? And if so, how have you been able to do that?
Yes, so we pride ourselves on an entrepreneurial spirit. Typically, if a faculty member has an idea, usually my first instinct, talk among my administrative team, I always say our first instinct should be to try to say yes if possible and figure out how we can make that happen. And that extends, by the way, to students as well. We pride ourselves on being very receptive and responsive to our students when they want to try new things. But a good example of that has been in the last couple of years with some changes in the ABA standards with regards to professional identity. And now with the new next gen bar exam coming down the road as early as 2026. And we don't know in Tennessee when exactly it's going to be adopted, but a number of jurisdictions have already adopted that exam. So our faculty undertook a curricular review and overhaul. I've said that one of the most challenging things to do is take a faculty that was hired to teach a certain curriculum and tell them to change it or ask them to change it,
Yes.
because everyone thinks that what they teach is the most important thing, and we couldn't possibly reduce the number of credits in that class because I feel the same way for the classes I teach. I understand, but our faculty did do a really good job in trying to streamline some of our required courses, taking out some of the courses that as required courses that are not going to be subjects on the bar, and then incorporating some of the skills into that are in the content and scope outline that's been circulated by the NCB into their classes. So for instance, I teach civil procedure, and one of the other professors who teaches it and I collaborated on our final exam last semester and had an integrated question set on our final exam that looks like the sample questions that are going to be or that at least have been released by the NCB that are going to be on the next gen bar exam to try to
Oh,
get
good
into
for
the
you.
traditional model of assessments. So we're not
Yeah.
really changing what we're teaching necessarily in those required courses, because unless the scope outline has changed for a particular topic, but really trying to redesign our assessments around those. And then another really exciting new class we have is a professional identity class for our first year students in the second semester. It's a 2-credit pass-fail class, and we call it the Successful Lawyer. And it is really designed around the 6 values that we have adopted as a faculty that we view are essential values to develop in our students for them to have as lawyers. The values are service, excellence, resilience, integrity, empathy, and self-awareness. The class is designed in modules around these 6 values. We're bringing in lawyers who are by any measure successful. We just had a Tennessee Supreme Court justice speak to the class last week. We had the director of the Tennessee Lawyers Assistance Program a couple weeks before that, and other very former U.S. attorney from the Western District of Tennessee coming later this semester to kind of get their perception on those values. As you know, Patty, hearing from practicing attorneys and those who are successful in the field can be far more influential and effective on students than hearing from us, who they see all the time and hear from all the time. And faculty members have done a wonderful job building into that class a lot of opportunity for group work, group discussion. There's a component where they have to go out and interview a practicing attorney one-on-one and hear from them how those values have impacted their practice. So a lot of other law schools have a class like this, a first year professional identity class, and have for a number of years. And we've used those as inspiration, but really tried to make it our own and part of the LMU law culture.
I love that. Sounds like a really impactful class for your students. And are you getting positive feedback from them?
Yeah, I think even some of those that were skeptical, maybe like, well, I don't see how this is going to help me pass the bar, or I don't see how this is going to help me in my doctrinal classes, are really starting to understand the value of really thinking about what's important to you, what kind of professional you want to be. And again, when you have folks coming in to speak who are by any definition successful, telling you how important these have been to their career, that helps as well. So, I actually have built it into my schedule to go hear from these folks as well, because I find them to be inspirations to me. And so maybe that has some value, having the dean come to the class just as a student to hear from
Yeah.
these folks on the students who are there. It shows the value that I'm placing and we are placing as an institution on the class as well. And I hope they realize, I think at some point, if they don't already realize how lucky they are to have these folks investing in them And, they are happy to do so because they see our students as the future of the profession.
Okay, let's change gears a little bit and move on to one of your entrepreneurial projects. You and I have talked at length about your online part-time degree. As you know, St. Mary's also has a part-time online degree. And you just started that, I think, with your first class this year. And tell us a little bit about why you started a part-time degree program and how it's going so far.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about our program. This is another one where we were sat back, you get the full approval, and you think as a faculty, what direction do we want to go? And when I interviewed for the dean position, which was actually the day that people call it the day the world shut down, but it was the Tom Hanks and the NBA and all of that with COVID. I think it was March 10th or March 12th. That
Yeah.
was the day of my interview with the faculty. And I remember in my presentation stressing this point of we've got to provide to truly meet our mission, we need to once again provide an opportunity for people who cannot stop working, cannot necessarily move to a city to attend law school full time, to have the opportunity to go to law school. As I mentioned, we started out with a part-time program. And so our first couple of classes who graduated in 2013 and 2014, I talked to those alums, I hear from them, and I had heard over the years many times, I couldn't have gone to law school. I couldn't be a lawyer now if you hadn't given me the opportunity to work while I was going. When are you going to once again provide an opportunity to that population? And we did have for a number of years a flex time option where folks could take a reduced load, but the classes were during the day and it really wasn't an option for people who work full time or were not local to Knoxville or at least East Tennessee. So after getting through the full approval, one of the first things we did, maybe it was crazy, but it is immediately pretty much start the process of seeking an acquiescence from the ABA to have a part-time hybrid program. We received approval for that program almost a year ago today, and we're able to admit our first class. We currently have 21 students in their second semester. The way the program is built, it's about 2/3 of the credits are fully online, and about 1/3 of the credits, slightly over 1/3, are hybrid. And the way those hybrid classes work is 2/3 of the hours are in person, 1/3 are asynchronous online, and the in-person hours are delivered in sort of immersive sessions over long weekends where they go to class Friday through Monday, typically. So between the orientation and those, which is in person for them, and those sessions, they have to come to Knoxville 14 times over 4 years. And it's actually the first 3 years because the fourth year is totally online. Runs through the summers. So they take 8 to 10 credits each fall and spring, and then 6 credits in the summer. And thus far, fingers crossed, it's been a huge undertaking, but it is going as planned. The group is wonderful. I love working with them. It's extremely rewarding. And we've had the benefit of, they are almost all full-time working professionals. Many of them have families. Our average age or median age, I guess, in the program is 35 as opposed to our full-time program, which is 25. We also have the benefit of them being about twice as diverse as our full-time class that came in last fall, the part-time class that came in. So I think we're providing a product that doesn't exist in our region. We're the only law school in the Southeast. I think you may be the closest geographically, or perhaps I know there are some programs in the Midwest and Northeast that have similar programs. But as of right now, at least, we're the only program like this in our region. And so we're fortunate to offer it. Again, it's very mission oriented for us and really excited about the applicants that we're getting to the program.
That's fantastic. Congratulations on that. And we had a very similar story here that we wanted to increase access and opportunity to those who otherwise wouldn't be able to undertake a legal education. And so the students are so thrilled and grateful and feel very connected to each other and to St. Mary's in a way that I think we hoped would happen, but it has exceeded all of our expectations. So that's how we're going to diversify the profession, right? We're going to look to people who aren't within 30 minutes of a law school, who don't have the privilege of taking 3 solid years off, as you and I likely did, to get a law degree. So bravo to you on that. So one of the things that the ABA has certainly put more emphasis on the last few years, and the Next Gen Bar will rely on, is experiential learning. So how does LMU handle experiential learning for your students?
Well, this is another area where we've tried to be creative and mission focused. So we are a small relatively small law school. Our enrollment right now is about 350 students total across both programs, and a relatively small faculty, and not a large alumni base, of course, because we're a new law school. And so not a huge donor base to do things like donate large sums of money to establish legal clinic or center. And so our core primary method of delivering experiential learning has been through simulation classes and then the externship program. We have a very vibrant externship program. About 80 to 90% of our students, varies by class, but we've been at about at that number the last several years, choose to do at least one externship while they're in law school. And we offer externships at all different kinds of sites. So it's not just the traditional sites of judges' chambers or legal aid or public defender, district attorney, but also at private firms. This has required really a village. So it's required East Tennessee, the legal community, to be very open and welcoming of our students and want to bring them in and train them and allow them the opportunity to really do lawyering skills and gain that experience. It's required oversight by the law school and by our director of experiential learning, who's fantastic, to ensure that our students are receiving quality experiences at all of our sites. You know, we're fortunate in Tennessee, a lot of states have this, but we're fortunate in Tennessee that the Supreme Court will allow law students to get their limited license so long as they have completed at least half of law school. So we're talking second semester, second year students, and then over the summer, and then third year students. And they can only get their limited license, however, they can only get them through the law school. And so if they're part of an experiential learning program. So that allows our students who are at qualifying sites, which are limited to basically district attorney, public defender, and nonprofit, to actually appear in court and get legal experience under the supervision of a practicing attorney. And because I know you have a lot of first generation students. So a lot of our students, it's the first time they've ever set foot in a courtroom when they actually appear to argue a motion or appear at a hearing under the supervision attorney. So it's a tremendous experience for them. We also have started to develop some clinical opportunities for our students. And those are developed, of course, by our full-time faculty and approved through the typical curricular process. But then a lot of them are taught by some very engaged and active adjunct faculty members. We rely so much on our solid adjunct faculty. I started out as an adjunct myself, so I'm very partial to our adjunct faculty and the experience that they impart to our students. So one is the opportunity in a surrounding, more rural county to appear in court and argue orders of protection. They get their limited license for that. And the judges have been very cooperative and very complimentary of our students who are there appearing in court. Another is an opportunity in that same judicial district to do mediation. And so those judges have a practice, particularly in certain types of matters and where parties might be more likely to be pro se, to require them to engage in mediation. And so our students have undertaken training to get there, what's in Tennessee known as Supreme Court Rule 31 mediation training, and then actually mediate. And so that provides them with invaluable experience and also that training and that certification that they have when they graduate. And then we have another partnership with Catholic Charities of East Tennessee for some students to do some immigration work and represent clients before the immigration court. And we're continually, actually was just this morning on the phone with a federal judge here in East Tennessee with the possibility of what might evolve eventually to another clinical opportunity for our students. So yes, that is the advantage. There are disadvantages of being I wouldn't say brand new anymore, but a relatively young law school, but also some advantages in that it does make you nimble and have you at least have the opportunity to try new things, which hopefully will benefit our students because that's, the ultimate goal.
Well, those are really exciting initiatives. I love to hear about these innovations and that you're fully embracing looking at legal education in a different way. And I'm going to ask you a question about legal education, but first I just want to say, wow, can you believe we are almost concluding our 4th year as deans?
I know it is really, well, as you know, Patty, what's the average tenure of a dean? So we're above average at
We are
least.
above average now.
Almost 4 years. And it's been a really unique time between obviously the pandemic, which everyone dealt with in the world, but in education in all sectors, I had to deal with how to handle the pandemic. And then in legal education, between changes to the ABA standards, the proposed change with the admissions test and making it going admissions test optional, with now changes to the bar exam, rapid changes in legal practice. It has been, in a way, it has seemed like it has flown by. In other ways, it seemed like a lifetime. but it's been extremely rewarding at the same time.
Ditto. Feel the same way. It's really phenomenal that it's been 4 years. And yet sometimes it's like dog years because of the pandemic.
Days are long, but the years are short.
That's right. I think that's a great way to put it. I know I never know what my day is going to be like. It is never what it looks like on the calendar. There's always a surprise. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so great. But it's been fun being a dean alongside you, even though our baby dean school had to happen virtually. But we've still made the best of it, haven't we?
That's right. That's right.
All right. So in the coming decade, Matt, how would you predict that legal education is likely to change? As you recounted, there are so many ways it's changed already, I think, very quickly. But what do you expect in the coming decade?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, I think for law schools and for legal education to remain vital in our society, law schools have to have the ability to have some flexibility to meet their mission in the best way they see fit and based on the region of the country in which they're operating. Now, that's, of course, it's absolutely essential for there to be a gold standard in legal education and an accreditor that says each law school that we've accredited meets these minimum threshold standards. But law schools have to have the ability to serve the needs of their communities and populations within their communities rather than just be like a one size fits all. Because our law school, although our law schools happen to share a kind of a similar mission, we're located in very different areas of the country. And then you've got other law schools that have a very, very different type of mission. And serve different populations. On top of that, I think it is really important that we make legal education accessible to people who otherwise would not have the opportunity to pursue a legal education. And part of that is also making the opportunity to teach at a law school open to folks who maybe haven't thought of themselves as a law professor, haven't followed that traditional model of, okay, I'm going to go to a top 10 or 5 or 3 law school and then go do a federal appellate court clerkship and then work at a top 20 AmLaw 25 firm and then drop myself into a teaching position where my number one priority is where my placement of my next article is, not necessarily the students that I'm serving. Now, you and I didn't follow that model. Neither one of us did.
Oh,
And so I think we're in a good situation and through our experience to say, and I've talked to our faculty, particularly our faculty recruitment, is like, if we're going to recruit a faculty with a more diverse set of life experiences, we need to think outside the box in how we're recruiting that faculty, whether that's creating, like we have, a visiting professor of practice position to allow someone to have one foot in practice and one foot in teaching to see, what that teaching life is, and if that's something that's for them, whether it's creating other opportunities for adjunct faculty to be more engaged and become maybe more than just one course every couple of years, but give them the opportunity to become more engaged in the life of the law school. And that's not to say our traditional faculty who came from traditional model are not extremely valuable too, but I think opening up the doors to law school, not only to students, but also faculty and staff from non-traditional backgrounds who then become even more effective mentors to our students who come in. So I think that is for us to survive and not only survive, but thrive. I think that is one of the keys.
well, I think that's extraordinarily good advice for us as an academy. And I too started in it as an adjunct faculty member. And I bet there were people who told you back then that if you wanted to be a law professor, that was not a way to go about it. But thankfully, some people took a chance on us too. And we hope to be doing some of that similar work to make the faculty more holistic, really, because then they have different experiences to share with our students who also will have different experiences in the practice. So I hope that we see that come to fruition more universally. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story about the development of not only Lincoln Memorial University, but the Duncan School of Law and its accreditation. It's exciting that you're celebrating your 15th year soon, and I've really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you, Dean Lyon.
Thank you, Patty. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and I appreciate your leadership in legal education and your friendship.
Thank you. Same here. For those of you who want to listen to additional episodes of the podcast, you can find them on the Aspen Leading Edge podcast webpage or on any of the channels you get your other favorite podcasts. Thank you.